Every summer in Canada's forests, it's a battle to prevent destruction on an awesome, awful scale.
I have seen gas balls on fire that are 200 feet in the air. I have seen fire tornadoes that will rip trees out of the ground.
It's a dirty, grinding campaign that consumes increasing amounts of time, money, and often human lives. What's playing out now in British Columbia's central Chilcotin region is just one example. This is Puncie Lake, 700 kilometers from Vancouver. Once a wilderness resort destination for fishing and hunting, it's now scarred and charred. The fire here, one of the most aggressive of the summer, has burned over 80 square kilometers, including 18 homes, businesses, and other buildings.
We estimate it made up to a 13-kilometer, what we would call a run. So it went from here to here, which is approximately 13 kilometers in a single afternoon, in one burning period.
Rob Krause is the senior incident commander. He oversees a small city that's materialized to fight the flames. Up to 200 people can eat and sleep here for months. So we have our protection gear on, our helmets, and we're about to go up to the front lines of this firefight to meet a team that was the first in when the flames broke out here, fire suppression experts who call themselves the Chilcotin Ravens. The Ravens are mostly a First Nations team, and its members live in the nearby communities. There are enough fires here usually to keep them working full-time every summer. Charlie Alphonse is 22, and this is already his third season with the Ravens. He's digging up and exposing tree roots that are still burning and could cause the fire to flare up at any time.
This is day 12 for us.
In cities, firefighting, dousing buildings, and rescuing people is seen as tough but glamorous work. Not here.
I think we went through a fire every probably week at least.
This team works 14 days straight, 14 hours a day. During their few off hours, they sleep in tents, often without luxuries such as TV or Wi-Fi. The $18 an hour plus overtime they earn can turn into $20,000 over the fire season. It's decent money, but it's an arduous slog.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
The cause of this fire is still under investigation, but Alphonse was among the first to arrive after it broke out.
You could see it come over the peak about 100 feet in the air. You could see the flames. It was awesome, but you can't really say that. It was ripping pretty fast.
On the afternoon of July 10th, the wind-driven flames obliterated this resort and several other properties, but the Ravens got enough fire guards in place to prevent even worse losses. You said you saved a structure. I mean, how does that make you feel that you saved?
It makes me feel really good that we saved someone's house, that they could go home at night and go sleep.
In a way, the fire itself is the least of the dangers out here. The day the homes burned, a water bomber crashed in the lake, and the pilot was lucky to get out. And there are partially burnt, unstable trees everywhere. At another fire in Sechelt, one fell on a firefighter and killed him. We saw that risk here firsthand.
You can almost see it. Looks like it's almost ready to go right there.
Yeah, it's got a pretty good lean.
Tree faller Evan Rankin has to deal with a dangerous Douglas fir. It's a big one, likely 150 years old, and the fire has burned out its root system.
So he's wetting it down so I can get in there and it won't be too hot for me to fall the tree.
The tree is so unstable, it's shifting even as he starts to cut into it, and his power saw gets stuck.
It pinched me right away.
Ouch. Eventually, with the help of another Ravens member, they get the saw through. But then, the weakened trunk snaps unexpectedly.
Woo!
You really got to watch the top when you're doing this, because split second and, you know, something's happening, so you got to be able to get out of there quick.
The Ravens and the other fire teams here are very good at what they do. The bigger question, though, is whether we should be fighting fires like this at all.
By trying to protect our forests from fire, we've actually changed the way fire works in the ecosystem, and the fires are now more damaging. The size of fires and the total area burned in BC in recent years has been artificially low.
Lori Daniels is a fire ecology expert and a professor at the University of British Columbia. The problem, she says, is that we've actually become too successful at fire suppression.
In absence of those lower intensity fires, they're the ones that are easiest to put out. Well, when you remove those, what happens is the leaf litter, the needles begin to build up, you get more logs, the trees grow in, and you get very dense forests, which are now a really different scenario if a lightning strike were to occur and a fire were to start there. So now when the fire is burned in those areas, there's much more fuel and it becomes a much more intense and severe fire.
And that buildup of combustible material is what's put communities at greater risk. Many remember the terrible summer of 2003 when the city of Kelowna lost over 200 homes. But there have been many other fires in the area since that have also destroyed properties. In part, says Lori Daniels, because we've done a poor job removing all the dry, dead material on the forest floor.
They're at less than $1 million for ecosystem restoration this year. And we've spent $100 million, so that's your proactive management. And we've spent 100 times that on reactive management. They need to be employed longer in the spring and fall. We need them actively on the ground, expanding our ecosystem restoration and our fuels mitigation programs.
Controlled burns can help clean up the forest, and Parks Canada, for example, regularly uses them in national parks to ensure important areas, such as around national historic sites, aren't at risk from catastrophic fires. In this cool experiment, they actually put specially protected cameras on the trees as they burned to watch a forest fire from the inside. In BC, the province is now allowing more so-called modified response fires, where fires are simply allowed to burn. Here at Punzie Lake, this now might seem to be one of those fires.
I mean, it seems to have run its course. Why not just let this fire just burn itself out?
Well, with this fire, there are still too many values that are at risk. So the area we're in is primarily timber values that are here. We have lots of plantations.
Punzie Lake has about $50 million of assets, he says, mostly in timber. The cost to put it out is around $5 million. Therefore, suppressing it, he says, makes sense.
Also, the risk is it's only the middle of July. We still have 6 to 8 weeks of summer ahead of us. If the weather returns to hot and dry, there are still many areas of this fire where it could threaten communities.
The firefighting costs are adding up, though. $100 million in British Columbia this summer so far and counting.
We're going to start burning just down the edge of this road. We just want to bring the blackout right to roadside. So
Graham Cameron, the Ravens team leader this day, is setting up a controlled burn. That will reduce the chance this unburnt area will ignite when it gets hotter and windier.
we use bulldozers, we use skidders, we use water tenders like the one that just drove by. But when it comes down to the actual guys on the ground, you've got a hand tool and dirt and a bit of water, and you're putting the wet stuff on the hot stuff and putting stuff out, and that's about it. So it's very similar to the way they've been doing it for years.
Crews will stay on this well into September, sleeping in their camp and patrolling the fire to ensure it is well and truly out. Fighting a forest fire of this size is a summer-long endeavor for scores of firefighters, and in British Columbia alone right now, there are 16 fires similar to this. Chris Brown, CBC News in Punzie Lake, BC.